All right, now, Greta Thunberg, and I prefer Thunberg than Thunberg, is the Time Person of the Year. Now, if this is the bit where you're expecting me to wave my fingers at a teenager, I'm going to disappoint you. 2 reasons. Well, actually 3. One, the Time Person of the Year or Man of the Year in the past has been, among others, Adolf Hitler. It isn't about who is the most awesome person of the year. It is about whom is the person who we've either talked about the most or is representative of something big that has happened over the past 12 months. Now, personally, I think that they should have gone for the protester as a generic person, as the person of the year, because in the past they've gone for, you know, lots of groupings of people because, look, the protester in Hong Kong, the climate protest, take your pick. I think protest is, whether we like it or not, back in a big way. But, I mean, are they trolling? Is the expectation here that basically Time, which is now a pretty lefty magazine, they have whacked Trump all the time, put her on the cover, then hopefully people like me go nuts on TV, then lefties talk about it for the next 3 days, or is she actually the person of the year?
I think it was kind of a no-brainer for me because she is iconic. Whether you like her or not, everyone's talked about her, everyone has an opinion on her, and she has tapped into this global movement on climate change. She's garnered so many headlines, she's dominated international forums. I thought it was a pretty obvious pick for, and you're right, it's not necessarily the best person. It was Donald Trump a few years ago, and a lot of people who were criticising the cover were really happy about Donald Trump being on the front cover as well.
Yeah, but those sooks don't understand that whomever is elected president every 4 years goes onto the front cover of Time magazine.
Because they're then the most powerful person.
Well, that's the point.
I got fantastic odds on that, you know. I put so much money on the Times Person of the Year. I got like $6 on not on Donald Trump. I put it on Hillary Clinton because I thought, well, she's a guarantee, you know, all the polls. It was a lock.
Well,
it was a lock.
One of many disappointments for you in 2016, yeah. I have no doubt.
Been a fun couple of years, mate. Ask me who's going to win tomorrow, hey?
Yeah, well, you know, we'll get into this. But, I mean, look, I know why Greta Thunberg pisses people off, right? I get the concept. No, but I'm saying I can understand why people say, you know, a kid telling us all how to be, come on. I get that sort of her presentation is all sort of, you know, like, have you ever smiled in your life kind of thing. But I find it pretty needlessly mean to whack away at a kid. Now, I also don't think that the kid should be promoted to speaking at the UN and the face of this and the face of that. And I think she's being used by a lot of people who, let's be honest, like, you know, the music industry loved kid version of Michael Jackson. They liked Macaulay Culkin in the movies, and I get a feeling that you know, there's probably not going to be a huge amount of interest in her at 23, but it's fascinating when she's 16. Yeah,
but she so clearly passionately believes this. She is dedicating her life to this. So I don't know how you can say that she's being used. You know, she's started this thing. She's pushed this. She's dedicated it. Like, you know, no one went to her and said, "Can you do this?" She did this. She brought this whole thing.
I'm interested when she was talking somewhere earlier today, and I was interested when she said she doesn't like talking to politicians anymore because inevitably all they want is a selfie. And she says that she's very sick of selfies because she knows that there's, oh, well, I've been near her, a bit of dust onto me. And I thought that was really quite insightful. About how you get used when you become either a person of profile or a person of prominence on a particular issue. And look, she still goes to the speeches, she still does the UN thing, but she's not all that keen about shaking the hands of a politician.
Well, that's kind of her value, is she doesn't trade in everyone else's currency. She doesn't really feel the criticism. She obviously just completely impervious to it, but she loves that power and the attention, and she's kind of didactic in the way she talks as well. She's a bit of a lecturer, but it works for her, and I think she's going to be completely impervious to this.
But it's an incredible focus as well. You know, you ask her as many journalists have done, you know, what have you achieved, or what have these protests achieved? And she says nothing. You know, nothing. The world is still burning, and she goes on.
But what has she? But then conversely, what has she achieved? She's been able to give speeches at more prominent places than the city.
No, but this is the thing. She will say, "I've achieved nothing." None of us have achieved anything because the planet is still completely buggered,
She's got
right?
a lot of attention.
Well, sure, but you know, she will take every opportunity to refocus on that question of, you know, how stuffed is the climate.
It's interesting where I've been trying to think about who moves the needle one way or the other, who convinces whomever apparently needs to be convinced, right? And, you know, I think that I'm not entirely sure that a lot of people sort of who are a little bit, I think there's a thing, but I'm not quite into it. Whether it's the kid, whether it's the mum, I don't know whom it is. I certainly don't think that it is the Extinction Rebellion people. I certainly don't think that it is many of the people who did the snap, protest in the middle of the city yesterday. I think if people want to make a point about cultural change, as difficult as it might be for you to be able to buy a bus ticket and maybe go 15, 20 k's out, try and find some locations in Western Sydney, suburban Brisbane, suburban Melbourne, and make your point there. And I mean by your thousands, whatever it happens to be. But to me, as long as it continues to be inner city focused, as long as it's basically during work hours, all the rest of it, I think that it essentially just normal people go, no, whatever.
The problem is normal people, no one likes pollution, no one thinks emissions are a good thing.
Correct.
But at the end of the day, when you're trying to convince people, yeah, your electricity might be a little less reliable if you do this. Yeah, it's a horrible argument to make.
Well, and this is the thing too, where this is the failure of every single pollster, including the one who defamed me on Twitter, suggesting that not only was I a racist, but also apparently a drug addict, but well done, noted. Better just to bring it up than send you the lawyer's letter. I think that, does climate change exist? Are we doing enough? But there's always a third question, are you willing to pay for it? Now, when you were a candidate at the election, that third one, where either the talking point or the position of the leader was, the cost of doing nothing is always more. Do you think those who want to achieve something have to actually answer the third of those questions?
So, look, in answer to that last part about, the question from Bill, I couldn't believe that as a candidate watching that. I couldn't believe that we didn't have a better answer to that worked out. I think that was an incredibly pertinent question maybe 10 years ago. The market economy and the fundamentals of the market have moved on from that point. There is a reason that the world's biggest oil and gas giants are now getting into renewable energy, not because they're long-haired greeny hippies. They're getting into it because the fundamental market economy dictates that they should be into that.
So subsidies have helped move that, Mark.
Oh, sure. Whatever the reason is.
Let's not pretend there wasn't a big thumb on the scale.
No, not at all. But for whatever reason that we've...
What's wrong with that, though? What's wrong with having subsidies to develop new technology?
Sure, but the point is...
If it works.
The point is that if we're...
That's the whole point of investing, you find out if it works.
Yeah, but my argument about renewable energy is that, look, when it's about a mousetrap, I'm all in. But as we saw in Alice Springs, where a solar farm, one cloud went over, that joint was dead for 8 hours. When you see that the biggest battery in the world can only keep Whyalla alive for 24 hours, let alone the entire state for 30 minutes.
Well, that's Whyalla.
God love Whyalla. We went there with our town this year. We love them. But it's this thing where that's my issue, is that I have no doubt at one time that the alternative energies are going to be the thing. But how do you store it? How do you move it around to do exactly the same job as coal? That's always my... We've argued this for years. We will argue it for years.
Sure, but none of these questions are insurmountable. None of these questions are insurmountable.
But they cost. But you'd agree they cost to change?
I would agree they cost to change, but I would also agree that the coal-fired power plants that you just referenced are either 50 or 70 years of their natural life. They are dying. So we have to replace these coal-fired power plants with something. The question is, what are we going to replace them with? Are we going to replace it with the last generation technology from 150 years ago, or are we going to go the next step and replace it with the next generation technology? That's a choice.
Well, that's true, but the system that currently works, right, and I mean, I mentioned this at the start of the show. The people of Victoria have been told today they're about to get, over the next year, either between $127 and $159 increase in their power bill. At the same time as the Energy Minister in Victoria looks down the barrel of the camera and says, I can't guarantee supply over summer. Now, until you can square that circle, until you can fill that void where paying more for more, not paying more for less, then good luck trying to win normal people over.
Look, I agree. I mean, I've said for many, many times we need to look at natural gas as that plug for that little period of time that we're at while we reassure the market.